Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Motivational speaker, the comeback coach, and goal crusher Joe Rivera brings you inspiring leaders, incredible stories, and valuable lessons on how you can change, grow, and reforge your life. Now, here's your host, Joe Rivera.
What's up? What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Reforge Your Life Show. I'm your host, Joe Rivera. And here at the Reforge Your Life Show, we like to show you that the comeback is more than possible. And today I'm super excited about the guest that I'm bringing here, man. She's the CEO of P-Link Leadership. She's an executive coach, a professional speaker. She's a dear friend of mine. Gretchen Pisano, welcome to the show. I'm so grateful for you being here.
Thank you, Joe. I mean, I would say yes to a conversation with you any day.
Same here. I love the energy. We met at a shop that we both went to, and we grew a nucleus of a lot of people that we still stay in contact with. And man, it just goes to show how when you go to events and masterminds that, it's what you learn is important, but it's the magic happens in the room. And man, I'm so grateful that we cross paths and we continue to connect with each other. We're able to do this together.
Same. I was talking to somebody else, Joe's a new person in the similar program, and they said our cohort is legendary.
Cohort 20 represent.
Yep.
Love it. So Gretch, listen, I've heard your story, powerful. I love it. And some people in the audience may not have heard it, and I definitely can't say it as good as you can. Nobody can. So can you please share your story with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, you want me to start at the beginning?
It's your stage, girl.
Yeah. It's funny because I think sometimes you can get to a certain place in your life that you don't even recognize some of those early versions of yourself. And so it wasn't actually until you and I were talking that I was thinking about really how far I've come. And I think that when I was a younger person, well, I know, as a younger person, I had a plan for my life. And that plan went something along the lines of, I always figured I'd work. I knew I wanted to have meaningful work, and I'd get married and have a few kids, and, all would be well. And then I think I thought I was doing all the right things. Like as a kid in high school, I would, I got good grades. I made my way through school. I went off to college, and I thought I was doing all the right things. I had a boyfriend at the time who, I ended up getting married after a long time, but like I did the thing, right? Like I did the long distance relationship. It was blah, 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 blah. Anyway, fast forward to sitting in the parking lot of a grocery store with my 2-year-old in the back, recently in the process of getting divorced. I had been helping my then ex-husband's company, so I didn't have like a career to fall back on. And I had a moment, like a frozen moment, like just paralyzed by fear as I sat in the car with my 2-year-old in the back thinking like, how am I going to, like, what is this even going to look like? How am I going to do this? The loss was significant after such a long time and after having been so young in the relationship, and feeling like I literally like feeling so stuck, like I couldn't even like make the car move, let alone like make myself like, how am I going to move forward in my life? And I think now when I look back on that time, I remember actually calling my dad and asking him like, is the hurt ever going to go away? Like it will ever stop hurting? And he said, well, there'll be some element of pain always, but it will get better. And then really needing to figure out how I was going to do that, from there by myself. So then it became a story of bootstrapping myself and learning how to be a single mom and learning how to, like not feel sorry for myself when there was like, when your child is sick and there isn't anybody to help you out, like you're just doing what you can, even if it means you're getting a handful of hours of sleep or taking them sick to the store to be able to get the medicine that you need. Um, this was a time in my life when I took the calculator with me to the grocery store to figure out exactly what I could put into my cart. And it was very unfamiliar time because it was just nothing that I had anticipated. Like I just didn't see it coming my way. And I should clarify, like the getting divorced, I was not a victim in that story. Like I chose that because the marriage ended up being so destructive and I wasn't willing actually to risk my daughter in that. I think that she was always the definer, like the definer that made me realize I needed to choose something different after 12 years. And the definer that made me realize there was no way we were going down. Meaning, like, I always thought about her as like I was the only thing between her and the wolf at the door, and the wolf at the door being not enough money, not enough food, not enough opportunity, not enough of the kind of life that I wanted to create for her. So I just slowly started to put the pieces back together again and building a life that is now what I'm doing now, but it sort of started one piece at a time. So I originally started out learning how to become a graphic facilitator, which was something, I had some raw still around. I mean, Joey, you and I have talked about strengths. It was a strength that I didn't even know that I had, but somebody else saw it in me and I was able to start building around that. I was, this was a self-employed situation. So figuring out how to manage childcare and travel and still be there and be a present parent. And then, that kind of each step built on the step. So went from that to facilitation, to coaching and running 2 businesses, to going through master coach training on a scholarship, going on at that point to get my master's from the University of Pennsylvania. When I had like no money, like I had to borrow the 50 grand that program was, like I had to borrow that on what I called a wing and a prayer. I actually named it that. But I mean, like borrow that money, just believing that I could make that investment in myself count. And, building that, parlaying that into founding my business, P-Link Leadership, in 2013, and now putting all the pieces together around executive coaching, leadership development, strategic thinking. How does that show up in a consultancy? How do I scale that? Because I realized after all those years of being a solopreneur that I wanted to build a larger company, both to be able to be part of a team, but also to be able to scale revenue beyond anything I could do on my own. And so that was 2013, and now it's 2025, and we have 15 employees and a global company. And we are 100% remote, which I always wanted to prove could be done. And I tell my employees all the time, the goal for me in life is to do meaningful work, be well compensated, and have a great quality of life. And that's what I've been able to build. And now I have 3 kids.
Man, that is awesome. Plus, there's a lot to unpack there, and I love the way you mentioned, the protecting your daughter from the wolf at the door, and the wolf at the door being, money, no money, and the wolf at the door basically being, the limited beliefs that come up and the fears that you had, because you mentioned the fear, right? The fear of, man, how am I get up and do this shit on my own? That this
Yeah.
is, I'm sitting here not knowing how I'm going to pay the bills, but you know what? I know I'm going to do it. And you mentioned something else that's really powerful that I think the audience really needs to pick up on. And you said that you weren't the victim, right? And it's so easy for people to go through these challenges in their life, right? Whether it's divorce, whether it's drugs and alcohol, whether it's getting fired, whatever it could be, and through challenges in life, and thinking that man, I'm a victim of my circumstances and conditions. And you were able to pick up and say, now, hold on, I'm not a victim of my circumstances and conditions. I control my own destiny. What, at what point did you like really pick up on that? Because, in the beginning, it's easy to fall into that victim role. So I want the audience to see what that transition was like.
So um I think that I probably always had a strong sense of myself, and I think that I lost connection with her sometimes along the way. And so there was a moment actually when I realized that the divorce needed to happen was like one of those moments. It's a slow growing awareness, and then it just all of it, it's an epiphany. And it was my daughter was rounding the corner. We were in the house. She was rounding the corner, came running around the corner and came towards me. And all of a sudden, like I saw myself and her like from an outside perspective looking in. And I thought, this is not the life that I want for her. This is not the life that I want for myself, and this is going to end up in a bad place because I won't be able to flourish, and I didn't actually think that I was good for him either. There's a different set of problems there, challenges there. And so I was being brave for her in that moment. I was being brave for her in that moment. And I could take a few steps and then, there were a couple of things faltered. That moment in the parking lot was a turning point moment for me because what ended up the scary thought went from being, I don't know if I can do this to we're not going down. Me and her, like, I will not allow us to go down. Whatever that looks like, I won't allow that to happen. And there are places in there where we have to wrestle with our own identities, right? Like I had an idealized identity that I had built for myself when I was a younger person going through school, and that didn't happen. And then it was like, okay, like, so do I just give up on those dreams or do I decide I'm going to pursue them in a different way than I thought I would initially? I do also have to thank my dad. I mean, my dad was like, I think from an early on, any kind of language that sounded the least bit like a victim mentality, like he picked up on that right away. He was like Gretchen, you're not doing that. Like, what does this, look like if you take ownership for it? So I think that like a victim mentality is when you put the locus of control outside of yourself. And that was a circumstance that I would never allow myself to do again. Like I would never give that away again. Because I think sometimes we can give our power away. To your point, sometimes we might give our power away to substances, but other times we can give our power away to other people, and other times we can give our power away to self-doubt.
100%. And that's why it's important to surround yourself with people who are going to inspire you rather than people that are going to bring you down, because that toxic energy, man, that catabolic
Yeah.
energy that people could bring into your life, you control whether or not it's in your life or not in your. And it's so important to be aware of that. And man, Gretchen, I just want to say that, congratulations for getting yourself out of the situation that you were in, because there's a lot of people out there, male and female, who struggle with, bringing a child into the world with someone, and that person's not good for them, and they end up stuck in that relationship because they have a fear of what life would be without one of the parents around. They have a fear of splitting the family because for the baby's sake, and you know what? That's not a way to live life, because there's so many things that could go wrong with that situation. for the couple that's involved, for the baby that's involved. That's not a way to bring a baby up in a life of misery where both sides aren't happy, that the parents aren't sleeping in the same bed, the parents are always fighting at each other's throats. I mean, who wants to bring a baby up around in that environment? And a lot of people struggle with the upbringing that we have, and parents are saying, divorce isn't supposed to happen, or religion says divorce isn't supposed to happen, and you were able to pick up and move away from that. So for the audience out there, because there might be some women out there or some men out there who don't want to leave the situation because there's a baby involved. How difficult was that situation for you? And what was that turning point that made you be in that car with your daughter at that moment and say, you know what,
Yeah.
no, this is what I'm gonna do?
Yeah. I think that so a couple of things in that. One is sometimes in this particular circumstance, I was more in love with this person's potential than they were in love with their own. So I invested, 12 years of my life trying to make that potential bloom and and the and to change myself in ways that somehow he would reciprocate. And again, like I think it was a slow growing awareness that I kept thinking like it's going to change when, it's going to change when, it's going to change when. And I reached this point where I was like, it's never going to change. Like the things that I want him to change about the way in which he drinks, the way in which he participates in life, the way in which he makes or breaks commitments, he's not interested in changing. And so if I stay, then it means that's what my daughter is being raised in, and that's the role model that I'm setting for her. That is the best that you could expect or that you should settle. And I think, yeah, we enter into marriage with the best of intentions and we love people, and people do change. You hear a lot of times like, oh, people don't change. That's people do change. And sometimes people don't change. And either way, it can mean you have to ultimately make the decision that, I believe you're on the planet one time. You have that time to be able to live the most meaningful life. You come in with a purpose and you have free will. So you could choose to undermine your ability to live up to that purpose. We can make choices that undermine our ability to do that. And so it was a slow growing awareness and then a sudden realization. And then afterwards, it was about kind of getting back to my purpose. Like, what do I know to be true about myself? What is the difference that I want to make in the world? And what do I need to be able to make that difference? And what do I need to be able to give my child something to stand on?
Love that. And you know what? Yeah, 100%. People do change. And that term of, people, some people don't change. That's bullshit. People that don't change because they don't want to change.
Right.
And people, the audience out there has to understand, you can't change someone who doesn't want to be changed. The change has to happen from within.
Right.
And, so you left the situation because you realized the person that you were with wasn't going to change, and you didn't want them to change your direction in life, and you wanted to go back to seeing what your dreams were and accomplishing your goals and being able to go out there and make a difference around the world. And I'm sure along that process, which congratulations on doing exactly what you aimed for, but I'm sure through that process you had to make changes also, because when we go through a situation where there's trauma and there's toxic environment in our life, we have to sometimes look at ourselves and be like, you know what, I changed who I was for this person. Now I got to go back, do some inside work, and change who I am to get back to the person that I know I could be. What did that look like for you, Gretch?
Or you're gonna laugh. You're gonna laugh about this because so one of the questions I often ask my executive coaching clients is like, how are you contributing to exactly the results you don't want? right? How are you contributing to exactly the results you don't want? And this question comes from, as many of them do, are my own experience. And so I had to look back and think about, like, where were my fingerprints on this? And I had to learn, because, I mean, like, makes me feel a little vulnerable to say this on air, but I mean, I was a fixer. Like, my nickname growing up was Florence Nightingale. Like, I was a fixer, and like, the more kind of broken or wounded the guy was, the better looking he was to me. It was like I had some kind of weird butt goggles on, I'm like, and I had to come to terms with that after this, breakup. And it wasn't like I just realized it and it went away. Like, what I realized was that, oh, like, when I feel that spark, like, I need to check myself, because what's the thing that I'm actually attracted to? Like, is it the person or is it the need?
Mm.
And so, that was a really important part of my own growth, and figuring that out, and so that I could then, once you know what that is, then you can own it and dissolve it. And if you really want to help people, like, become a coach, become a therapist. You don't have to marry it. You can get paid for doing it.
Right, right. Hey, and you know what? You can get paid for doing the thing that you fixed about yourself and help other people who struggle with that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I'm curious. You're going through this journey, and you've gone and made that transformation. You're going out there and helping people transform their lives. The audience might be wondering, what is some of the limited beliefs, though, or that old belief system that you had to crack through in order to create a new belief system? And what does that new belief system look like? So from old to new.
Yeah. And I would want to say, and for your audience to say, that we are all works in progress. Like,
Yeah.
there are moments where we make big leaps, and it's not like we arrive and we're done. We're just in a new here with another there to go for. So what I would say early on, the beliefs that I had to crack through, one for sure was um coming to terms with the fact that some people would think of me as a bad guy or a bad person, because, to your point, getting divorced was not something that was all that common. Like, I feel lucky that, we're talking about this in the 90s and not in the 60s or 70s. But keep in mind the beginning of my story. Like, I was the good girl. I was the one that did well in school. I was the one that looked after my siblings. I was the one that didn't disappoint my parents. And now all of a sudden, like, and people kind of had me on a pedestal. So I don't know if I can say bad words on here or not, but I'm like, like, again, I know it's you, Joe, right? But like, my dad gave me a great piece of advice. He said, prepare to be the asshole. And he didn't mean like be an asshole. What he meant was, just resolve yourself that there are going to be people who judge you. And if you resolve yourself to that, then it's not going to get in your way. So I had to crack through the limiting belief that my life needed to be defined by this idea of being the good kid, being the good girl, and that going against public opinion somehow, was maybe a bad thing or a bad person. I definitely had to go through break through a limiting belief, that I had something worthy to offer. So as a solopreneur and an entrepreneur, you're not going to the same office every day. Every single time you're going to a gig, you're earning credibility. This is true for a speaker, right? Too. Every time we take a stage, it's not an audience that's familiar to us. It's a brand new audience. We have to earn credibility in the moment, earn that rapport and that trust every time. And so I needed to break through the limiting belief that that there was something unique that I had to offer. And that was worth putting myself out there for, and worth getting paid to do. I also had to break through some limiting beliefs around money. So, and I still to this day work on this one. I was raised with two pieces of financial legacy. One was it's bad to want more than you need, that you're greedy or that you're a bad person, and bad things will happen to you. Two was that I could either have a career or I could have a family, and I couldn't have both. And I wasn't willing to give those up, like I didn't want to give up being a mom. I was already a mom, so I didn't want to give up, obviously, being a mom. And I definitely didn't want to give up feeling like I could earn my own money, have my independence, and make the contribution to the world I felt like I had to bring.
Yeah. And you deserve it. And the listeners out there need to know that they deserve it too. You could have both, and you could crack through those money limited beliefs, man. And they be a bitch, huh? I mean,
Oh gosh.
right? It's money's not raised. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money's the root of evil. And it's such bullshit.
Rich people are nasty. I mean, here's the crazy thing. Like, I am a good manifester. Like, when I set my mind to something, like, it can come true. And the funny thing about money is, like, historically, I could manifest it to, like, within $5. Like, I mean, I'm talking, like, later on in life, like, six-figure things, and it would still land within $5 of exactly what I needed. Not more, and that is a powerful thing. Like, when you think about a powerful aspect of limiting beliefs, because you will never get more of anything than you think you deserve. You'll never get more money. You will never get more love. You will never get more success. You will never get more security than what you think you deserve.
And manifestation is real, man. I'm a big believer in it. Let's dive into that for a minute, because I do believe that we create our own destiny. I do believe that visualization is vital to success. And if you don't have that vision, if you don't believe it, if you don't, meditate on it, pray on it, whatever works for you, man, you're doing yourself a disservice. So as far as that manifestation goes, what are your beliefs around that manifestation and how to make that happen?
Yeah. So, I think we come in with a map, like with this idea of kind of hardwired into us what we are meant to be doing. Now, I don't mean in a linear way, but I think there's this intrinsic feeling that we get when we know we're working on purpose. And what this means when you're working on purpose is you're aligned with your values, you're using your strengths, like you feel like the energy, you're creating more energy and you're expending that. Those are all kind of signs that you are working on purpose, meaning both with intention, but also with your purpose. I think we definitely have free will. We can absolutely get in our way and screw ourselves up. Limiting beliefs is one of the ways that can happen. So when we are challenging our own limiting beliefs, the first thing is to be able to observe and dispute your own thinking. Like, your brain sends something up, like, I don't deserve that, or I don't fit in here, or I don't belong here. And the first thing you want to do is catch yourself thinking that, and then turn it, and say, is that belief even true? And is that belief serving me? And if it isn't, then what is an equally valid belief? Because we can't BS ourselves. Like, we know when we're doing that. So what is an equally valid belief that feels better? Maybe they haven't seen somebody like me before here, but that doesn't mean it's not my time, is an example of like a turn. And so that's being able to watch your own narrative, because your internal narrator, who we sometimes call the inner critic, is one of the greatest predictors of your future. So, that you've heard, I'm sure you listeners have heard the quote, like, whether you believe you can or you can't, either way, you're right. So we need to create a working relationship with our inner critic. Like we're never going to, I've not had a client yet, including myself, who can completely get rid of the inner critic, but we can develop a working relationship with them. And then as it relates to the visualization, that is about making tangible things that emotionally you are afraid to believe. So by making tangible, maybe you write down a story of incredible good fortune, more than what you think you might ever accomplish. And the best way to do that, Joe, is to write the scary story first. Like write down, like in a paragraph format, every terrifying thing you think might happen to you. And then reverse story and sentence by sentence, write exactly the opposite. And now you have two ends of the continuum, one that is about what we call future prospecting, and one is about catastrophizing. And your reality lies somewhere in the middle there. But we're so much better at catastrophizing, right? Like we can do that when we're driving, taking a shower, laying down and take a nap. Like the future prospecting, we actually like have to have a method to do that. So I find that retelling the story really powerful. I do that at least once a year. And then vision boarding. I think you find images that speak to you and resonate, and you actually pull them out, put them on a board, you make a collection so that you can see like, what are you craving? What is your sort of inner compass actually know you're capable of, even if, up here you're still doubting yourself.
Man, I love that. I'm big on, writing the goals down, writing out what you want your life to look like. I believe that that's a big part of manifesting it. One thing I never thought of was writing the nightmare down and then rewriting what I want the future to look like. That's a powerful way of looking at it, man, because I remember when I was in rehab and they had us write a letter to our drug of choice. And we had to write what we wanted our life to look like after drugs and alcohol. And it's kind of the same concept, right? And
Yep.
the way you're talking about doing it to manifest, man, I hope the audience picked up on that because that's a golden nugget right there. Because something happens when we put it on paper. And when you could demolish your inner critic like that, and
Yeah.
it takes it to a whole nother level because that's what it's all about. It's about letting the inner critic know that it's not in the driver's seat. It doesn't sit in the driver's seat. It can sit in the passenger seat. And when you want, you put it in the back seat because it doesn't
Yeah.
control the destiny.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so important.
And the inner critic, like the working relationship with the inner critic is like, they can be really tough. Like the language they use to talk to us can be really tough, but the inner critic is really just trying to keep you safe. It thinks it is, right? It thinks that's what its job is and that's how it's doing it. And the trick with that future prospecting is that when you write that nightmare story and then you go sentence by sentence and you write exactly the opposite. You don't write what you think is a better version of the sentence. You write exactly the opposite, right? So the nightmare might be, I'm never going to make enough money. I am going to be, living in my car, and I will lose custody of my kids. Now, the flip of that is going to be, I am going to make more than enough money. I will live in a beautiful home and have multiple cars, and I will never lose custody of my children. In fact, I will have an incredible lifelong relationship with them, and they'll want to spend time with me as an adult. And what happens, like, as you do the storytelling, you get these goosebumps of truth because the other part of your body knows that.
Yes. It's like if it's waiting for you to accept that, right? And remove that other side of, what the inner critic is doing, because you're right. The inner critic is trying to protect you, is trying to keep you comfortable, and it doesn't want you to go out of your comfort zone to grow, right? The paradigm never wants you to do that. So,
Right.
Shifting that paradigm. And that's why you're feeling it on the other side. Cause it's like, damn, this is what it's supposed to feel like. You see
Right.
freedom that you feel on this side when you kind of let it go. That's what it's supposed to be. So Raz, I'm curious because you mentioned, earlier about another belief was worrying about what other people and how people are going to view you. How important was it to say, you know what? Fuck what other people think of. I'm not going to worry about what other people think, because it's ironic how, once we kind of let go of that worrying about what other people think, and, saying, you know what, fuck what they think. I'm not going to let an outsider, shift my momentum. I'm going to keep moving forward. That authenticity is what people are attracted to about us, right? Because they feel that energy. So in one mind, you're saying, I fuck what other people think, but then you're being of service to people because you could be your true authentic self. How important was that shift for you? And when did that happen for you?
It wasn't a one-time thing. I think it's important to think about the fact that, like, when we're choosing to be brave with ourself, it's, you can say, well, screw what other people think about me. Another way to think about that's a little bit more easier for me is to be like, I'm willing to be rejected. Because I know that, like, it's not a one size fits all. That being said, every time they so if we use a metaphor, every time the stage changed, I had to go through that process again, right? So meaning that we get comfortable working within a particular frame of reference. Maybe we start out in our local community, we get very well known in our community, and we're like, okay, like, I got this. Like, I'm okay. People aren't, ever going to love everything I have to say. Like, I got this. And then you get a call that says, hey, Joe, we want you to come speak at this state convention. And here's how much money we're going to give you. And if we love what you have to say, like, maybe we're going to syndicate your show. Now, all of a sudden, like, the stakes are higher, like, the exposure is higher. So for me, like, as my career evolved and the arenas that I was operating in changed and became broader and more exposure, global, more at risk, I still to this day have to kind of recalibrate, ground myself, and self coach myself into saying and accepting that I can tolerate the risk. It's okay that there will be some people who don't like what I have to say, that I challenge their belief sets, who want to stay the way that they are. But that's again a work in progress. That is an ongoing, was not a one and done for me.
It's never a one and done thing. And for the audience out there, it's not about perfecting these tools that we're discussing. It's about the progression and the little steps that get you towards that, and being able to also, you know, practice these tools, because
Yeah.
it's just the mother of skill. And it's not going to happen all at once. It's not going to be an overnight success, but you got to be able to press into that and utilize it to go into your toolbox about when something happened in the past and you overcame that. What did you do to do that, and be able to do it again? And, speaking of that toolbox, I believe that once we crack through old belief systems and build new ones, that there's a value system that's uncovered. And these core values are those tools that we could kind of dig back into to go when these beliefs do come back up, and these challenges do come up in life. And we utilize these core values that we hold on to be able to do that. What are some of the top core values that you uncovered along your journey?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know these really well because, Joe, they are my compass. And I decided when I learned this about values and understanding that they are so deeply rooted, right? It's our morally valued ways of thinking, feeling, and doing, and they change the way we see the world. Like, I decided I wanted to know my values like I would know a best friend. So my top value is hope, optimism, and future mindedness. And that is about always, hope theory basically says we have a belief the future can be better than it is today. and we have a hand in making it so. That's really important because that's the agency part, right? I think that goes all the way back to the car in the grocery lot parking lot, that I believed I could have a hand in making it so. I didn't know how, but I believed in that. And I laugh. I think you and I actually talked about this, but I laugh because I think about myself as a little girl, like when the Publishers Clearinghouse thing would come in the mailbox. Like I was like, I would fill out every one of those. Like, and I still go to the mailbox thinking, what's going to be in there, and it's only like 18 catalogs, but like, it's like, you never know what might be in there. Like that value is still in me. And my number 2 value is gratitude. And I think about gratitude all of the time. Like, I put myself to sleep at night thinking about what am I grateful for the day and how am I proud? What am I proud of myself for in that day? I have a game I play my family at red lights. I call that I'm So Lucky. My husband absolutely hates red lights. He has like no patience for them. And so when we hit a red light, I shout out, I'm so lucky. And then we name as many things as we can until the light turns green, about what we feel like we're lucky for. And I do that by myself too, so it's hope, it's gratitude. Perspective is super important to me. And that means that I'm looking at things from multiple angles and considering other people's perspectives, putting myself in their shoes, not what would Gretchen do in their circumstances, but what would this look like from Joe's perspective in Joe's circumstances, and how does that help me think about what I want to do here? And then curiosity and humor are 4 and 5. So those 5, I really think of them as like my band of brothers. Like they go everywhere with me. And when I'm trying to make a tough decision, where there's trade-offs, it's the values I check in with, like, what would hope and optimism tell me to do? What would gratitude tell me to do? What would perspective have to say about this? How would curiosity weigh in? Gretchen, take yourself so seriously. Put a little humor in there, sister. Like, it's, um, so those are the values that guide me.
Yeah, man, the value system is so important in guiding us through our life and towards our destiny. We stay aligned with those values. Values are going to be different. I mean, Gretch just
Totally.
top 5, and I mean, they're all. I believe those are all vital values in life. But everybody's, value system is going to look different and be numbered in different ways. Somebody first might be gratitude, somebody second, but it doesn't matter. As long as you're aligned with your core values and staying true to who you are, that's what's important. And you just dropped some bombs with that. I love that. Scratch, please tell the audience, where they could find you and what you're doing now, though.
Yeah. So you can find me atplinkleadership.com. That's the letter P like positivity and the word link, just like it sounds, plinkleadership.com. You'll see the team there. We do executive coaching and leadership development around the world. You'll also see my speaker page there. My current keynote is on big energy. It's really the energy to lead, the power to last, and the space to breathe, which is really taken after my own story. And you can also find me on LinkedIn and Instagram at just at Gretchen Pisano.
Awesome. Well, that's going to be in the show notes for everybody listening and watching. And Gretch, a couple of things that I asked all my guests. The first, you touched a little bit on it, but what is the word purpose?
I think about purpose in 2 ways. And one is about our destiny. What are we here to do? But the second is about intention. So I think there are really no bad choices besides illegal ones that will wreck a life. But if we make our choices with purpose, meaning intention, then we're much more likely over time to move towards that expression of our best self on the planet than if we just let life happen to us.
Amen. That is powerful. And when you hear the word reforge, what comes to
Yeah. I love that word, Joe, and I've loved it since the very first time you met and you told me you had Reforge Academy, because I think of that as to remake, to rise from the ashes, like the way the Phoenix did. And I think that we can do this multiple times in our lifetime. I don't think that we get just one shot at that. I think that we can rise from the ashes when things don't turn out the way that we thought they would, or maybe we make a series of decisions that land us someplace we didn't expect to find ourselves at all. We rise, then we go for a while and things are good, and then maybe there's another set of decisions on not the same as the first set. But again, we find ourselves in a phase of our life where we're like, well, okay, wait, like this wasn't exactly what I was wanting. So then you reset, recalibrate, and you do it again. And that's what I think about Reforge. And I cannot, I would probably mispronounce the name of this, but I want to say it's something along the lines of Kijusiki, but it's the Japanese mending, where they mend with cracks with gold, and the actual crack itself becomes part of the beauty. And I think that is who we are at the end of our journey and what we look like.
what's it called again?
I'm going to ruin it. I'll somebody who's listening is going to know it. I can't Google it while I'm on here, but I think it's something along the lines of Kitsugi, Kitsuki. It's like this. I'm ruining it, but
Right.
anybody who knows it is going to know it. They're going to put it in. They're going to send it in.
They're gonna send it in the comments. Hey, listen, you never said that you speak Japanese, so you're all right.
That's true. I know what it looks like. I know what it looks like. A beautiful person with cracks and scars that actually are mended with gold, because they're the gold of self-belief. They're the gold of faith in yourself, and just being able to embrace that part, not hide it, right, Joe? Like the way you talk about your experience, you don't hide it. It becomes part of your strengths.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's what made me who I am today. And I remember when we met at that program, and you came up to me, I was wearing the Reforge Academy sweatshirt, and you're like,
Yeah.
Reforge, I like the way that sounds. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? That's kind of where we started clicking.
Yeah. Kintsugi.
Kintsugi. All right, you took a look.
Kintsugi, yeah.
You took it.
Uh-huh.
You got the peek at Google.
Yeah, I got to peek at Google because I can't stand that about myself, right? So I'm like, I got to do it. Like Kintsugi.
Fair enough. Kintsugi. I love the analogy in that also. So it definitely connects.
Yeah.
So, Gretch, there's somebody out there today that's listening to the episode, and they don't know how to reforge their life. They don't know where to start. They don't have the tools. What's one piece of advice you could give someone out there listening that's looking to reforge their?
Well, I think the very first thing that I would do is do that story exercise we talked about, because it's free. You need a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. And I promise you, when you sit down to write your nightmare story, that is going to be readily available to you. So write that down and then do that sentence by sentence translation, and notice what you're feeling when you do it and when you're done, and try to name that feeling and hold on to the feeling. And then take one step, one thing that you can do in the next 72 hours. That it's that easy, right? Like, meaning it's got to be something you can do in the next 72 hours. Make a phone call. Maybe even that feels too hard. Maybe it's just looking up the phone number. But it's one thing in the next 72 hours that moves you closer to that version of yourself that feels like a distant dream and is terrifying to even consider, but it's available to you if you're willing to take the first brave step.
Love that, man. It's in those small steps where the magic happens. all steps at a time.
And I think, Joe, you said it too, like, depending on the circumstances that you find yourself in, you have to find some other people who are willing to support that better version of yourself, willing to believe in you taking the risk, instead of people who say things to you like, who do you think you are?
Right. Absolutely, man. You're as strong as your circle. You know, surround yourself with people who inspire you, and guess what? You're gonna be inspired to do more with your life. It's how it works. Gretch, what's one thing that the audience doesn't know about you that you enjoy doing for fun, other than stopping at red lights and saying how lucky you?
Oh, just to be clear, I don't love a red light, but it has made me have a better relationship with them. What is one thing? I think I'll answer this differently next year, because my kids are getting ready to go off to school. My youngest are twins, and so they're getting ready to go off to school, and it'll be the first time in 32 years that I'm not raising children like every day. That's amazing to me. But I actually I really love animals. So I really love being outdoors with my dog, and I also really enjoy spending time with horses. When at one point in my journey, I worked on a dude ranch as a wrangler, and so I have associated there's a lot of incredible connection that can happen with horses, and so like spend my time around them.
Awesome. That is, they say horses are intelligent animals, so it's the one to have to.
Yeah.
So, man, Gretch, thank you so much for coming through. I knew you were going to bring the energy, the knowledge, and you overexceeded the expectations. I mean, I didn't think it was possible, but you did it, girl. Thank you so much.
Well, I love what I'm doing. I became an executive coach because I believe in people's potential, and that's what we do when we're coaching, is helping to support and witness and encourage and champion people to come along. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience.
Absolutely, man. And everyone listening and watching, thank you so much for listening, tuning in, and don't forget LFSS. Like, follow, subscribe, and most importantly, share, because there's somebody out there today that's struggling to bring their life back, to bring their business back, to bring their relationship back, their finances, their health. They're looking to make a comeback in their life, and they might not have the tools. And tuning into this episode or past episodes could help them be able to reforge their life. So share the episode. Stay productive, stay profitable, and stay blessed.
You've been listening to Reforge Your Life with your host, Joe Rivera. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about Joe Rivera and how he can help you or your organization reforge your life and regain your place at the top, head on over to withjoerivera.com and follow Joe on all social platforms. The Reforge Your Life podcast was produced by Thrive Loud Productions. Thanks for listening.